back, everybody, to the Season Encounters. That's right. Reverend Jeff's back. We're doing official Bigfoot encounters from Tuolumne County, California. Right there outside the Yosemite National Park. That's right. Lots of stuff going on. News and new Quasi theories and camping tips for stupids. Holy crap, is it going to be a busy show tonight? And look at that. We didn't crash. As I said, everybody, hi, I'm the Reverend Jeff. You're there, I'm here, and that makes this awesome. So thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to kick it off with a little bit of new stuff going on. There's quite a bit of stuff going on in the weird news this week. So let's see if we can't get caught up. Of course, this past weekend was the final filming for Finding Bigfoot, and early celebration of Bigfoot days this year for it and the whole deal, but there just didn't seem to be that many people that actually showed up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when all that video comes out. Okay, old George Norrie here, consider the source, but this has been floating around quite a bit now. Photographs this weird little girl playing in the woods. Nobody can identify her. A trail cam posted in a wooded area of upstate New York captures an eerie image of a little girl that has left an entire town baffled. The strange photo come to light after property owners in Cambridge, New York, noticed the spooky-looking child among the images produced by a trail cam they had set up on their land. Concerned as to why a little girl was playing by herself deep in the woods, the landowners shared the photo with the police in the hopes of identifying the child. This is where things get a little spooky, as authorities have attempted to locate the little girl or her family for the last few weeks, yet to have come up short, and no one in the town seems to have any idea who she is. Some people think it's a hoax. Some people think it's a ghost. I don't know which, but that's some creepy shite that I don't want on my trail camera. So thanks to that one's going around all over the place. An albino blue-eyed orangutan was rescued from captors. Bastards. Hashtag stop eating your cousin. An extremely rare albino orangutan has been found and saved by conservationists. Thank you, people. The beautiful 5-year-old primate was being held captive by locals on Kalimantan, the Indonesian side of the island of Borneo. With pale skin, hair, and eyes, it's sensitive to light, and the first rescued albino ever recorded. Saved by the Borneo Orangutan Survival Foundation, an international animal charity that is trying to protect endangered animals. Hey, if you're looking to fund something, skip all these jackass GoFundMe campaigns for all these people that are hoaxers and fund something like this. Give a donation to them. Send them $10. I'd rather see you do that than half the other crap on GoFundMe. All right, moving right along. Ancient human DNA found in Ice Age caves, even when bones were not found. Because they say that we're missing, but we don't really know that. New technique is key for studying the evolution of our human ancestors. Scientists found DNA from ancient humans in the soil of caves, even when there's no bones uncovered at the site. The research shows that even when no fossils are around, sediments inside the cave can tell us which early humans were present, where, and when. This information is key for understanding the evolution of our human ancestors. And this is also going to come up with dozens upon dozens upon dozens of unknown prior human ancestors as well. And yes, if there were caves, chances are people lived in them. Even today, you got a cave out back your house, chances are one time or another somebody lived in that sucker. The study published in Science describes a highly sensitive technique for analyzing ancient DNA. Used to study sediment from 7 caves in Europe, Russia, and dating between about 14,000 and 550,000 years ago. Among countless genetic fragments, the researchers were able to detect the DNA of Neanderthals, Denisovians, even when there were no bones around. That is pretty friggin' cool. And I really hope that, as DNA as the machines get better, as the understanding of what it is gets better, the finds that are going to be coming in the next couple of decades, well, I really hope that that we get some real answers. Anyhow, moving right along. Let's see here. Hey, if you do want to support something, our boy Cole Wilmas, that's right, is going to be working on Alone, the Harvest and Alone horror combo. That's right, you're getting 2 for 1, baby. And they're just now starting out. So if you do want to support it, check them out. Indiegogo campaign projects, the Harvest Alone horror combo. Yeah, they got stuff starting at $5. If you just want to kick in to be a supporter, that's how it gets done. Yeah, I didn't even tell him I was going to do that, but that's what friends are for. Sorry, I can't reach the SatanFudge.com. Hey, can walk on 2 legs. Yes. This gorilla has been at the zoo for a very, very long time, and he's learned to walk around like peoples. Hi, I'm peoples. No, you're not peoples. You're still a gorilla. Your legs are shaped differently. You don't have hips like we do, and I'm sorry, but that's the weirdness in Sasquatch. Everybody thinks it's the arms. It's not. It's the legs. It's the long legs of the Sasquatch that really throws the proportions of what you're expecting to be said gorilla into said Sam Squanch. Yeah, the arms are goofily long too, and that's probably a leftover from when they actually did walk like this, or if they ever did walk like this. I don't know. There's another error, and we're just gonna jack that bad boy out too. So yeah, this gorilla's cool, but he still doesn't really walk on 2 legs like Sasquatch does. Okay. One of the UK's rarest animals was spotted just chilling on a garden wall. That's right, a black fox. Super rare black fox has been sighted sunning itself atop a local resident's garden wall on a bright Wednesday morning this week. Not only is the animal a rather majestic looking creature, it also has a super rare genetic defect, which gives it the black fox its distinctive fur. That's right, 7:30 in the morning. Rarest fox in the world hanging out with some dude's garden wall. Thanks a lot, Britain. We love you. Okay. Some of the tallest peoples in the world trace back to Paleolithic mammoth hunters. A prehistoric population of mammoth hunters gave rise to some of the tallest men on the planet, says new research. At least these guys think so. Men from Bosnia, and there's a lot of strange consonants in that word that don't go together, the Netherlands, Croatia, and Montenegro. That's the one. Montenegro. I knew that was a word. On average, the tallest in the world, according to new research that helps to explain why such individuals often grow to 6 feet and more in height. Because remember, the average height around the world is like 5'8". I ain't tall people. Tall people don't understand. You're goofily, weirdly tall. We're not short. Their stature appears to be at least partly a genetic legacy of the upper Paleolithic culture, says the study, which is published in the Journal of Royal Society Open Science. I'm sure that's a hoity-toity place. The upper Paleolithic broadly dates to 50,000 to 100,000 years ago. Or sorry, 50,000 and 10,000 years ago. I put an extra 0 in there. So, if you're hunting giant mammoths, you're probably going to grow to be bigger sizes over the generations. That's kind of how it works. It's nice to see it in practice when you read it in biology. All right, finally, no real Bigfoot news this week. Sadly, not much I can do about it. Chimps pass on sponge drinking like family tradition. That's right. It's a family the copyrighted, sorry. 6 years ago, a chimpanzee that had a bright idea to use moss to soak up water, then drink from it, and 7 others soon learned the trick. 3 years later, researchers returned to the site to see if the practice had persisted to become part of the local chimp culture. They now report that the technique has continued to spread, and it's mostly been learned by relatives of the original moss spongers. This adds their earlier evidence that family ties are most important routes for culture to spread amongst animals. And that's exactly a good point to this. Human culture spreads very much the same way, through families. Even Christian families are different from one to the next, depending upon what their family traditions actually were and are. It's kind of neat that they do learn and pass that down. And of course, as we're talking about DNA, they're also saying that our DNA retains these memories and passes them down to our offspring. So not only do our offspring learn it from us by seeing us doing it, but they're also, after a while, kind of pre-programmed to do it. And that's what are, at least that's what we think they are to this point. And that, everybody, is this week's news. Wow, look at that. That went by like super quick, didn't it? Okay, on to the next thing here. I guess it would be time for a little bit of a Quasi. Of course, this is just going to keep arguing with me here because that's what it likes to do. That's not what I want to do. Yeah, one of these times it's really going to work the way it's supposed to, and then I'll be happy about it. But that's not right now. Hey, there it is. That's the one I'm looking for. So finally, sorry, folks, it takes me time sometimes to get YouTube to agree to share the things I want to do. There we go. Time for a new Quasi theory from our Quasi scientist, Mr. Dean Cooper. And now, Quasi theories from a Quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Sewers. The subject of sewers was recently brought to my attention. What brought the subject to my attention was the sewage in my basement. What put the sewage in my basement was threefold. Firstly, a whole lot of rain. Secondly, an invasion of my sewer pipe by tree roots. And thirdly, but most importantly, a break in the sewer pipe running from my house to the main sewer out in the street, preventing the complete removal of said tree roots until such time as said broken pipe could be fixed. Needless to say, the pipe was fixed as rapidly as possible, the remaining cloggage was removed, and my basement became sewage-free. This was not my first encounter with public sanitation systems. That first encounter occurred decades ago in the summer of 1968. While others of my generation were celebrating the summer of love, I experienced a summer of sewage. I had a summer job with the village water and sewer department. The most memorable part of that job was shoveling the euphemistically named sludge from the city sludge beds. What was that sludge composed of, you may well inquire? It was the solids, as they were equally euphemistically named, the solid portion of the sewage after it ran through the whole treatment process. It was poop. It was cellulose fibers from the toilet paper. It was a lot of hair. It was a lot of other less mentionable items that had been flushed down the toilets of the town. Items that were particularly durable, being made of rubber, and I don't mean rubber duckies. That said, the treatment process resulted in a product that smelled, but not in a bad way. It smelled like wet dirt. But then, good dirt is mainly worm and bug poop. The history of humans endeavoring to get the poop out of their cities goes back a long way. The Indus River civilization in India had complicated sewage disposal systems as early as 2350 BCE. In the city of Lothal, all houses had a toilet connected to a covered sewer, with water running through it to conduct the waste to either streams or, more commonly, cesspits. The Babylonians used baked clay pipes as early as 4000 BCE to conduct sewage out of their cities. The Minoans, the ancient Greeks, the Mayans, and the ancient Chinese all had covered sewage pipes of one sort or another. The Romans in Rome had one of the biggest sewers of ancient times, the Cloaca Maxima, which is still in use today, but only for rainwater. Cloaca Maxima, oddly enough, means big sewer. The public toilets and baths dumped into it. Later Europeans usually just had outhouses, private and public, that used pits and had to be shoveled out when full. Users of these outhouses were encouraged to urinate into buckets, which were emptied into vats. After a bit of aging, the resulting ammonia was used to degrease wool. Sheep's wool is very greasy. The contents of the pits were usually used for fertilizer until the introduction of gunpowder. The poop was then piled high. As it aged, the poop produced saltpeter, That is to say, sodium nitrate, the component of gunpowder that produces oxygen very rapidly when ignited. What may have come out explosively in the outhouse became even more explosive later. With that incendiary sentence, I will end this Quasi. I'm feeling a bit flushed. You may read the text of this on my blog at baidin.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Well, there you have it, folks. Sure sounds like a load of shit to me. Get it? And with that, that actually steps it up for time for camping tips for stupids. So let's set that on the right audio device and have her listen.
Camping tips for stupids. Tip number 38. Tent stakes. That's right. Not just for killing vampires anymore. An important piece of camping gear. Now, if you don't want your tent or your fat bloated ass rolling down the campground like a puffy beach ball or tumbleweed, you'll stake that shit to the ground. Trust me, I have experience in that. So, which stakes are the best? Well, millions of years of scientific research derp stuff has concluded that it is likely up to your own preferences. There is a fair variety out there on the market. High density plastic, aluminum, steel, but do know that the stock cheap ones are shit. And if nothing else, just tie it to trees. Just make sure the trees themselves aren't going anywhere in a windstorm. Or are living ents from that movie Lord of the Rings. Don't want to be dragged off into the forest with one of those guys. Or slow talkers. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids. Be sure to spay and neuter your idiot population.
There you have it, folks. This week's Camping Tips for Stupids. Spay and neuter your idiot populations. That's for sure. All right, well, let's see here who's hanging out in the live hangout tonight. And we'll thank every one of you guys for being out there. I see that there's Mr. Drummer Forever 69. That's right. Gary's hanging out with us. I'm sure the wife is with him. Hi, my name's Forrest Groves. Nobody gives a honking shit what your name is, boy. Get on the bus. No, we do appreciate that you're out here tonight. Cruiserweight 190. Hey, that's a heavyweight fight there. And Mr. California Pickin', he's hanging out with us tonight. Our quasi-theorist, of course, Mr. Dean Cooper. The Life and Times of JCM, Mr. Jebin Moore. As Derlin Drake, how you doing? Yep. I think I'm going to get the hang of that one of these days. Sam Squanch Rivera's in the house. Now, batting third, playing center field, Mr. Kurt Harris. That's it. There's a Taylor McGee floating around out there. Lance Windsor, how you doing, man? Jason Gerd, Brad Dupree. Of course, he's always in a place to be. Let's see here. I know there's more people than that. Said hi to Drew, California Picking. I'm pretty sure I did. If I didn't, I have now. We're going to scroll up here and see who is in here. There's a Mr. Andrew Jones. How you doing? Glad you're joining us here tonight as well. No, there's Oreo Cream Rocks. I can never remember. Oh, yeah, Leanne something or other. It's one of them nights. It really, really, really has been. So I'm glad that everybody's out there having a good time. Let's see here. There's, that's all you people still talking. So I think there he was there, Mr. Jonathan Sasquatch. Stelios Cantos. Hey, dude. Dude, I hope you're coming up for the trip, man. It's starting to get stacked up. So let me know what your plans are at least. And I'll give you all the dates and times for sure. Speaking of that, the camp out is August 24th through the 27th. Yes, Thursday through the Sunday of August. That's 2 weeks before the holiday. So it makes it kind of nice. You can still be home for the holiday with your family that's out there. It's going to be in roughly around Sierra City, California. You can look up where Bassett Station is. That's where everybody will be meeting in Sierra City, California. So that will at least tell you at least where we're starting from. Let's see here. Let's make sure I didn't miss anybody at the bottom. If you didn't say hi, I didn't know you were here, so I really can't say. There's one. HNN Rules, West Virginia. There you go. West by God, Virginia. Glad you could join us. Buck Nye, the Bigfoot guy. There, he's out there as well. That's going to wrap it up for everybody out there. So glad you're here. We're here live Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. talking Sam Squanch. That's right, Bigfoot. And this is the season of encounters. So why don't we get back to that? It's my rambling on. That's what I'd like to do. Let's see here. We are talking about County, California this week. Let's get where we are. All right. So we're going to back out here just a little bit. Tuolumne County is basically right on the edge of the Stanislaus National Forest and the Yosemite National Park. And it is, as you can see, right in the ridges and the rain shadow, as we always talk about. We can scroll back here a little bit. I had already zoomed in on the area that we were going to be talking about. And the Yosemite National Park is right down here. The valley runs through another county, and we'll be talking about that one another night. But basically, where most of the stories are coming from is coming from up the northern side of this, near Cold Springs and Strawberry and so that's what I wanted to give you an idea. This 108 along all these forest roads is most likely where the Sam Squanches are hanging out, because literally a ski resort right over here in the background. So I think they'd want to be just a little bit away from them. So the neat thing about this particular county is the encounters go back all the way to 1963. So we're talking 4 years before Patty. We're only talking 5 years after Jerry Crew was found in Bluff Creek in 58. And they're talking, well, let's hear about the very first one that's reported here in 1963. 10-foot shrieking monster reported near Cold Springs, Tuolumne County, right there on Highway 108 is the nearest road. Report of a 10-foot shrieking monster, a horror tale of a 10-foot tall man, led sheriff's deputies last night into the dark, brushy area adjoining Peter Pan subdivision west of Cold Springs. Officers were unable to spot a monster, but returned with an equally horrifying report of unidentified shrieking sounds. There was definitely some creature in the woods, Deputy William Huntley confirmed. I've never heard anything like it, Huntley's partner Albert Miller of Cold Springs, a veteran woodsman, agreed. I've never heard a sound like that in all my years in the woods, he said. The search was touched off by an anonymous telephone call to the sheriff's office about 8:30 p.m. The caller refused to give his name on the grounds. Y'all think I'm crazy, but put me in a straitjacket. He reported seeing a man at least 9 or 10 feet tall in the road by an old gravel pit north of the Peter Pan track. Huntley quoted the caller, "It was moving around. It appeared to be human, but was the most awful thing I'd ever seen." Huntley said the caller added, "I'm scared, and I'm an adult, and I'm not crazy. I'm not drunk. I don't even drink." He said a second man then came on the phone to confirm the story. The second man had not seen the monster, Huntley said, but he reported seeing tracks more than 14 inches long. Huntley and Miller then drove down to the area. In the first radio dispatches to the Sonora Sheriff's Office, they reported hearing sounds something like a human in distress. "It's heading right towards the car. Here it comes," Huntley advised. After a delay, he reported, "Now it seems to be circling the car. It sounds more and more like an animal of some sort." Boy, this is almost War of the Worlds like. We might have to produce something like that, guys. But the two officers reported they could see nothing in the heavy brush. "It's definitely not a bear. 'Twarn't no bear," Huntley radioed. Albert thinks it's more possibly a mountain lion, but it's not a mountain lion noise. The officers shouted at the creature and noticed their shouts didn't even seem to scare it. As they attempted to move closer, however, the sound seemed to move away. The officers were forced to head back to Cold Springs when the patrol car's gas supply ran low, but they returned to the spot a short time later and found the unidentified creature still shrieking. Huntley said they stayed in the area until 1:30 a.m., but they were still unable to spot the source of the sounds. The officers returned to the scene after daylight, but found nothing to explain the mystery. There were no tracks, nothing to indicate anything at all, Huntley advised. He noted the area is brushy and rocky and the ground is frozen. Huntley and Miller reported that they will return to the area tonight on the chance that the creature will pay a second visit. Well, apparently, since there were no more in the Union Democrat articles, they didn't come back the next night. So, but cool. You got cops involved. You got woodsmen involved. You've got people that, what's this shrieking noise? I mean, we've heard people talk about Bigfoot and, the distress shrieking sounds, or, girls partying in the woods being loud, and those types of descriptions of some of the noises that they make. It's kind of strange. Again, in January 1963, in Cold Springs near Highway 108, again from the Democrat, pursuit led by sheriff. King-size tracks were traced today in an effort to confirm or halt reports of a 10-foot monster is roaming the Tuolumne County bushlands. The prints, described as 14 to 15 inches in length, were spotted in the morning near an area where Sunday night reports placed a grotesque 10-foot tall man and repeated shrieking noises. The tracking party, led by Sheriff Miller Sardella, reportedly followed prints north of Peter Pan subdivision through Genesis Park and the Sierra Boy Scout camp area below Cold Springs. Hey, might be a place to go visit. Tracks were first spotted yesterday by Reserve Deputy Albert Miller, and original reports from the sheriff's office set the size of the prints at 15 to 17 inches. Miller lost the trail among the cabins in the Genesis Park area. Sardilla, with deputies William Huntley and Pete DeMott, returned to the area this morning and spotted additional footprints. Sardilla described the tracks as shoe prints, apparently made before last night's light snowfall. He said cabins in the area were checked, but officers found no evidence of break-ins. The sheriff said that they saw fresh mountain lion tracks in the area, noting mountain lions will stalk and screech at humans. Sardella suggests a lion as the possible source of the noises heard Sunday night by Miller and Huntley. Boo, you just wanted something to close your case. I don't believe it. I think it was the Sam Squanch. All right. 1963, only this was the following winter in December. Highway 108 down towards Strawberry. The deputy sheriff from Pinecrest reported hundreds of 15-inch tracks with a 5-foot stride in Leyland Meadow, a popular recreation area. No casts were made, but news of the tracks made the local paper, the Union Democrat. Dun, da, da, da. All right, moving right along to the next one here. We are at 1978. God, that was a good year for the old Reverend here. Again, summertime, July, Tuolumne County, Highway 108 near Strawberry and Pinecrest. Let's see here. When I was approximately 11 or 12 years old, 78 or 79, I was walking through the woods with my younger brother and friend behind the California Department of Fish and Game patrol cabin across from the Boulder Flats campground. Very specific. It's about 50 miles or so east of Sonora. My father is a retired DFG patrol captain, and we'd vacation there several times a year. All we were doing was walking through the woods several hundred yards away from the cabin when we saw what looked like a conical-shaped head, brown in color, with deep-set eyes peering at us from behind a tree. Approximately 100 to 120 feet slightly uphill from where we were standing. So about a third of a football field, 30 yards. Yeah, you can see that thing peeking at you from 30 yards. I'll give you that. That's all. I still remember that I stood there telling myself that it must have been a tree branch, a stump glinting in the afternoon sun, but it was a bright day as I remember. It didn't move, and we stood looking at it for what must have been at least a minute. My brother then became upset, and we ran from the area as fast as we could. I still don't know what I saw, but you probably won't find this very interesting, but read similar accounts of purported Sasquatch remaining motionless while being observed. We talk about, being hidden in plain sight. You know, when a Sasquatch hears a noise, does it just duck down behind a log and sit still until the noise goes away? And, our poor humans' eyesight really isn't all that great. So we literally need things to be moving for us to even track them. A Sasquatch could be sitting on a log smoking a doobie, and we'd never even know it until he went to take a drag. All right. Let's see here. Springtime, 1983. Ooh, that was almost a year of good cars, but not quite. Nearest town was Sonora. Highway 108 went again. Boy, you guys down there in Tuolumne County ought to just be setting up trail anywhere off of Highway 108, because it sounds like it's seriously active. On or about the 25th of 1983, a friend and myself went to take a look at three-wheel motorcycle from an ad above Sonora, California. Late afternoon and met with the lady that wanted to sell it. We entered a fenced area with a large gate, and the area was about 30 feet across hard-packed red clay with an old shed to the right and some manzanita bush. It was a trail and through the brush leading to the cabin, unoccupied for years and unfinished. It was built against the side of the hill where you could walk into it from the trail, but if you looked out the window of the main room, it was about a 40-foot drop. It was particularly sitting on stilts. It was partially sitting on stilts. There you go. I'm an outdoor person, hunting, fishing, hiking, but I didn't feel good about this place. He had trouble starting the trike, and I recommended leaving it, but my friend wanted it badly, and the lady persuaded him to stay the night in the cabin, and she would rent a trailer the next day. Dinner and came back about 8 o'clock. We pulled into the gate. The lady lived about an eighth of a mile up the mountain in a mobile home, and as we exited the pickup, the trail, the brush to the right of it parted out and stepped this huge figure, like a man, but taller. We're both 6 feet tall and wider, and it was dark night, but it was darker than the brush and silhouetted very well. It was about 10 to 12 feet away and looked right at us. My friend jumped into the truck, and I pulled my Bowie knife out and swept it back and forth as I backed onto the hood of the truck without turning away from it. It casually turned to its left and started across the clearing towards the shed. As it moved, it partially turned its head and torso towards me and made a huffing noise as its arms swung as it crossed the 30 feet in about 4 strides. Turning away from us, we spent a sleepless night in the cabin as the door or a lock. Yeah, wow. And that's, kind of the things that happen. Waving your Bowie knife back and forth was more for you than it was going to be a scare for him. But hey, more power to you. Okay. Jumping right along here, 1993, summertime in June, upstream from Bloomer Lake, again near Pinecrest on Highway 108. The following is an account of the events of that day while conducting surveys for amphibians downstream of Bloomer Lake. A wildlife biologist observes a large upright walking animal near Pinecrest. First of all, I recall finding the remains of a fawn in the meadow I was surveying. Nothing unusual about that in and of itself. Ties in later. As I continued to conduct my survey, perhaps 30 minutes or so afterwards, I noted movement off to my left, or off to my right. What I saw was what appeared to be an animal covered with black, semi-long hair, 2 or 3 inches to guess, walking upright fully with a gape somewhat like the current hominids and approximately 5 to 6 feet in height and weighing 175 to 225 pounds. I saw something move for 2 or 3 steps. It did not appear to go anywhere, but just moved, but out of sight. It did not look at me or react to my viewing. It just simply appeared and then was gone. Oh, it cloaked. No, not really. To some extent, I was not really paying attention to my surroundings. I was focused on my work, but was enjoying the surroundings in the field sort of way. I recall thinking that looked like an upright creature walking through the woods. I tried to repeat my last movements to see if what I saw was a play on light and shadows. I was not able to recreate any likeness of what I had seen. The light and shadow of the forest did not seem to be the source of my observation. I did not hear anything either before, during, or after in regards to the sounds that one might hear if someone were walking in the woods, stepping on branches, or simply rushing through the ground. I did not take an active interest or pursuit as I was uncertain of what I think I really saw. I'm a skeptical by constitution, not only for my methodologies, but in general. Although I did play the event in my mind while I finished my survey and occasionally looked in the general vicinity of the area where I saw the animal, creature, mythological being, I finished my survey and left the area. While I was returning upstream approximately 100 meters from the meadow, I came across an exhausted buck, 2 or 3 years old, lying on the ground near the creek. I was able to approach and touch the deer. I clearly recall brushing flies off its head and sitting next to him for a couple of minutes and thinking, this is pretty cool. I was curious about the deer and did think about what I had seen in the meadow. I then proceeded upstream again, approximately 150 meters from the buck. I came across a mass of tissue, which looked to me like an aborted fetus. Upon further investigation, I discovered that it was the entrails of an animal, very fresh. I then looked behind me and saw a freshly killed doe. Her eyes were still clear, and there were no flies or maggots on or near the carcass. As I examined the doe, I could find no sign of struggle. I was unable to locate any apparent method of kill by another animal, thinking of a cougar, which usually will bite the base of the skull or that general area. I found no such evidence. The carcass was left fully in the open. What I did notice was that the right leg had been cleanly ripped off the main body to include a couple of ribs. There was no blood anywhere, and I looked around as if in the woods insects are quite active. There was that sixth sense of presence. I spent a while running all of the pieces through my head and thought that this was pretty cool. I then continued to hike out to Bloomer Lake, taking the experience with me. I mean, that's the way a biologist writes up the details of a Bigfoot sighting. Congratulations to you. That, I have all of the detailed information. I saw a Sasquatch, but I didn't think I saw a Sasquatch, but I might have saw a Sasquatch. And then on the way out, I found a deer. It was just like scared to death or something. We don't really know what, but he didn't die. And then I found this doe ripped apart, but didn't really see what killed it. All right. We love you, intelligent people, but let's, all right. Sorry. I don't mean to make light. Well, I do mean to make light. That's part of the show. It's fun. Campers have a sighting above Pinecrest. Imagine that. I bet you can guess what road it's on. Highway 108. All right. So they were camping in tents with our horses tied on a rope between the trees. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a terrifying scream, kind of like a woman screaming. And then I heard what sounded like my horses were loose and running up the hill. I ran out of my tent to where the horses were and shined my flashlight, and all of my horses were tied up and staring up the hill at the top, very upset. We didn't hear or see anything else, so we went to bed. The next morning, there were footprints going up the hill, like whatever it was had 2 large feet with a big toe. The next evening at dusk, we tied our horses up in the meadow. Our camp was about 300 yards away when we heard a loud sound like the horses startling or something. We looked up to see some huge thing running extremely fast across the meadow away from the horses in a cloud of dust. We ran over there, and one of the horses was so scared it had jumped over another horse while they were tied up. So we tied the horses up in the original spot and never heard another thing on the trip. We stayed a week, and we felt very strange, like something was watching us. There were no more animals in the area, etc. We were in the middle of nowhere, and we would hike around our camp, and there would be stacked rocks like bunches all around the area. The next day, they would be gone. This went on throughout the week, and one day we smelt this odor that was so bad around our tent that we came back from a ride, but we never saw anything else. This went on for 2 years that we returned to the exact camping spot. Then one year we were camping and we didn't feel that same strange feeling we had that someone was watching us. There were birds and squirrels and insects and all kinds of signs of life. The last day, a bear came into our campsite, and the horses didn't even seem to care. So we were convinced that it couldn't have been a bear on those first couple of encounters. Not with the sound it made, not with the way it ran away. That's one of those things that, people do realize that they're not necessarily in those same locations all of the time. But if you go camping the second or third week of August every year, and that's the time of those animals are moving through the area that you go camping in that time of year, there's a good chance that you're going to encounter something that time of the year. Then when you go back at a different time of the year and you don't experience it, well, that just kind of confirms that what you had in the first place was a little more interesting than what you gave it credit for. Okay, going to wrap it up here. We got a couple of more to do. Let's see here. Man has a late night sighting near Twain Hart. 2003, a little bit more contemporary one here. Let's see here. Tuolumne County. I bet you can't guess what road it's on. Highway 108. Christmas Eve, even 2003. My wife and I spent Christmas in the Twain Hart, California with friends. This area is deep in the Sierra Mountains and has plenty of snow during the winter months. We stayed at our friend's cabin, which sleeps 12 people with no problems. The cabin is about 6 to 8 feet off the ground, and the only way in is by using wooden stairs to climb into it. There was plenty of snow, and we were warned about walking on the porch. To get to the porch, we had to go through the house. The cabin was warm with great wooden heater, and even though the windows had no coverings, not sure what that means. Probably no drapes. Okay, Christmas Eve was upon us, and traditional events came and went. After midnight, everyone eventually went to bed and retired for the night. I was sleeping in a room by the porch, and the windows, like I said, have no curtains or shades. See, I'm smarter than the average bear. I could see very little from the windows except for one, which was near the outside porch light. I could see a small portion of the porch from that window. I went to sleep, as did everyone else, but was awakened several hours later. There was a slight movement all around the cabin, like a small earthquake. Thinking of that, moments later, I felt movement again, but this time it felt like someone was walking on the porch. I sat up to look around and did not see anything or anyone. I decided to use the restroom since I was awake and eventually found my way back to bed. It was then that I noticed something moving by the porch light. At first, I thought it was a man with long brown hair, but then noticed that it had hair on its arms and back. After a better look, it had hair all over its body, but it seemed more of an orange-brown color. Frightened as I could be, I just kept looking at this thing. It had its back towards me for several minutes and then slowly turned to look in my direction. 20 feet from the window, so I'm certain that it did not see me to see through the window. I would estimate it to have been about 6 foot 6 inches tall. Its weight was about 300 pounds and well proportioned. I compared the beast to a friend who is 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighs 300 pounds. It looked fairly young, like a teenage boy. There was no odor as this thing walked around. The face was more like a caveman, but very sad looking. I could barely see its eyes in the dark, but I noticed them when it looked left and right. They seemed to be dark brown. The beast was frightening when it turned and looked towards the window. Its chest was like that of a man, and I'm assuming that it was not quite as grown up yet. It was searching for something, but I don't know what. I also noticed that our friend's dogs were nowhere to be heard or found in the cabin. After a quick scan of the room, it turned and headed towards the porch rail. Eventually, it jumped from the porch, which was about a 6 to 8 foot drop. In the morning, I did not mention this event to anyone, nor did I go looking for evidence. That's my bullshit meter. I believe there are different species scattered around the world. I always believed they existed, but my thoughts were reinforced with this sighting. This is also the first time anyone has heard or read this story from me. Yeah, make a good Bigfoot campfire story. All right. Last one of the evening here, folks, before we get to our really kind of spooky Bigfoot campfire story tonight. And if you got little ones in the room tonight, you're probably not going to want to have them here on this one. It's seriously, you might want to take them out of the room when we get to the Bigfoot campfire story. Spring, March 2007. All right. Guess what road it's off of? That's right. Old Strawberry Road off 108. I was up off Old Strawberry Road on Sunday afternoon about 4 p.m. Take a left before you get to the Strawberry proper off 108, and I was getting the dogs out of the truck. It was a one-lane old road, and there was a turn about 300 yards away. I caught something out of the corner of my eye, looked up and saw the top halves of what I took to be two people walking across the street very quickly with their hoods up. I assumed hoods because the peak on the head. They were almost across the street, and at that point in the curve when I could not see them anymore, or when I looked up, I figured they'd be coming toward me or would be able to see them going away from me, as there's no trail up the hill from where I saw them, and they crossed at the turn in the road. I could not see any longer, but I could see the road before and after the turn. Never saw them again. I didn't worry about it. I took the dogs on a walk down to check out the river for opening trout seasoning in a couple of days. An hour or so later, I got back to the truck after letting the dogs romp around in the stream for a while, and I drove down to the turn to take a look. And there was a slip mark running about 2.5 feet down a muddy slope, and it looked like another ball of the foot impression in the embankment as well. There was no trail going up that hill there, and there's a fire and private road directly across from where I saw the two figures crossing the road. So there you have it, folks. You know, two Sam Squanches cross the road in front of an old dog guy. That's what happens here near the Yosemite Bigfoot National Park. Okay. Wow, that was a lot of stories tonight. Boy, we got through a bunch of them in just a short period of time. Look at that. Everybody is still hanging out there with me tonight. More viewers tonight than ever before. Look at that. Thank you all for being here. I do very much appreciate that. And every single one of y'all out there is awesome. We are growing leaps and bounds. Don't forget to stop by facebook.com/SLoungePodcast and like the fan page. And then you too will be up to date anytime we're going to do a show. You'll get messages there. Click the subscribe button at the top and the little bell. The little bell will go off when I'm doing a live show as well. I want to thank all you guys for being out there this week. And this is going to give us an opportunity to listen to another really fun Bigfoot campfire story. I'm working on more. I know I keep saying that, but I really am. And we'll have more Bigfoot campfire stories coming up. And that's not the one I want. No, it's not what I want. That's the one I want. Right about there. Okay, folks. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And may the Squatch be with you. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. These stories are based upon true events. Welcome to another Bigfoot campfire story. Sometimes an encounter with Bigfoot is amazing, and at other times it will scare people nearly to death. This story is one of the latter, and frankly gives me the creeps. Marty, Steve, and Jerry wanted to go camping for a week in the national park. Backpacking and hiking the trails seemed like the fun adventure for the summer, but things went a bit off track. I heard the story first time about 5 years after it happened. Now, I'll share it with you. Being middle-class kids from north of Las Vegas, Marty, Steve, and I decided a summer between high school and college we'd drive over to Yosemite National Park and camp and hike for a week before we had to pack off and ship off to college. See, we'd all been together since we were 8. I moved into the neighborhood, met Marty and Steve the first day I went to class. We were all TMA, so it was destiny that we could all be friends. Anyhow, we all lived on the same street, I mean, I can't remember a time when one of these two nuts hadn't been by my side for nearly everything worth remembering in my life. But now we were about to all go off to different schools. Kind of sucks growing up, but that is what happens. So this would be the last epic trip that we would have for some time. None of us had a car worth of crap, but Steve's dad had gone to California for the summer and mistakenly left his 4x4 Chevy Blazer keys on the rack, so that problem was now solved. We had planned on being back 3 days before him, so shouldn't be a problem. He never actually said not to use the car, so why not? The next morning, we all met at Steve's place to head out for our trip. The Blazer had a ton of cargo room, but we had packed plenty of times our gear, so it was pretty small. Food and water took up most space. Yosemite to Vegas was a mere 7-hour trip, so 5 a.m. we met up, and by 7 we were gone. Steve had gotten directions to get us into Tuolumne Grove, and we would hike into Hodge on Meta and back. With a ton of watering holes along the way, we really only arrived and got ready once we got parked. On the Blazer, we left a note. Marty had made it. It was all the details in our plans. When we started, how long we planned to be gone, when we intended to return. A tip we learned online, at least somebody would be looking for us should we not return. We left the same note with my mom and Marty's aunt. We'd all taken plenty of trips together, from desert campings to a trip to the Pacific Crest Trail. With Marty's uncle, this should be the chance for us to use all of our skills put together. We got going about 4 in the afternoon, and this being summer, there was plenty of light left, so we headed up the trail to find a spot to camp for the night. We managed to get into a spot to camp just before dusk, and just before dark, we were getting the fire going and ready to cook. All of us had brought tons of those bagged meals, so we heated up some and watered down, chowed around the fire flames. And before too long, the stories broke out. Marty started out with a tale of a missing hiker on this trail. For years, there were rumors of some sort of abduction or even alien intervention, but that, of course, had to have been made up. That we were sure of. Steve told of a couple camping in the park and had forgotten to put up their food at night and had gotten drunk and sloppy and ended up getting eaten by a bear. But to top them all off, I spoke of a tale of Sasquatch in these mountains right here. Since we were kids in the desert, the Bigfoot fascinated us like no other creature. I remembered hearing stories from old TV shows with as much about wildlife and protected lands. There could certainly be something out here. This was how each day came and went for nearly 4 days. We'd cover 6 to 10 miles a day. It wasn't until we were just a few nights from the trailhead that things began to get very weird. It was Tuesday night, and we were getting pretty low on food with just a few packs each, so we slowed down our eating, but that wasn't such a good idea, as earlier and earlier we'd find each day that we were getting tired. We were beat. We'd only made it about 6 miles before Marty rolled his ankle, and we really had to slow down again. Well, we looked on the map and noticed there was a creek nearby, so we beat off trail just a little bit to get some cold water on his ankle in hopes that it wouldn't swell up that much. We reached the creek in about an hour, but Marty's ankle was already angry and red, puffy. He couldn't barely touch it, let alone put any weight on it. So we dropped our packs and got him to the creek to chill the swelling and help with the pain. Steve went back with the packs as we had a couple of first aid kits in them. We would have to stabilize his ankle and help him walk out in the morning. It wasn't broken, just really sore. Hopefully a night of dipping it in the creek will make it all better. We set up a small camp right there at the bank of the river and got his ankle set away and broke out and ate like little pigs. We figured we'd fuel up and try to make it all the way out tomorrow. If we started at first light, we'd surely make it. We had drifted off to sleep one at a time, as we were all exhausted from the day. All of us except poor Marty, of course. He was in some serious pain. He sat and fed on the small fire and took trips to the creek to soak his foot. As he sat at the creek, he heard some animal noises coming his way. Not sure what they were, he sat still, hoping to get a view of some majestic stag or maybe an elk. If it was a bear, he was screwed, but as luck would have it, it was none of those things. Just as his eye focused on the newest sounds, his eyes let him see what he thought for sure never existed. A myth? A legend? Sure enough, a small Bigfoot. It was only 4.5 or 5 feet tall, but as the stories say, covered in hair, long goofy arms with powerful legs, and a face very much like a man. It hadn't seen Marty sitting, and soon enough he had heard a deeper call from a similar animal, and the little one ran off. Marty, amazed at what he had just saw, scrambled back to camp and woke us all up. He told us about seeing the small Bigfoot and hearing a louder, deeper one, and then watching the small one run off. Intrigued by the sighting, Steve and I went down to the creek to have a look around. There was a log down that crossed the creek just yards upstream, so we walked over it and lit up the area where Marty had seen the creature. As we just got about to give up on the search for any signs, Steve found a set of tracks coming in and going out of Marty's view from the creek. About 11 inches long and 6 inches wide, you could see where it had picked up and run. And then the tracks just stopped as the tree litter on the forest floor. So we went back across the creek and all went back to camp. The rest of the night it was hard to sleep knowing that Bigfoot was real. And not only that, but they were living right around us. Granted, we were a little off trail, but only by 3/4 of a mile, not some great distance as I had always figured. No, they seemed to be able to hide right in plain sight. It seemed that though the night we would hear some sounds in the darkness, and we would flash the lights all around, we searched the area, but saw nothing the rest of the night. As dawn broke, we ate once again, leaving just a couple of meals between us, so making the distance would be important. Marty's ankle started out okay, so we packed up and began to make the trip out. We took as much weight off of Marty's pack as we could, but even with that, we had to stop every couple of miles for a rest. At sunset, once again, we knew staying the night was the only way. Not only some 12 miles from the truck, we would most certainly make it out tomorrow. So we set up camp and split up the last of the meals we had between us and ate and sat around the fire. This had been an epic trip with ups and downs, and at one point I thought Marty was going to beat Steve to death over who was better, The Rock or Goldberg, but it all worked out the same. Just as it had gotten really dark outside, a very strong animal smell came upon the wind. Nothing that we had encountered so far on this trip. Almost like a skunk, but not really, and then it would pass. This happened several times over the course of a couple of hours. It was odd for sure. Well, Steve had gotten up to go to the bathroom, and he took his flashlight with him. It wasn't about a few minutes before he came back into camp without a word, kind of shaking and pointing backwards towards where he came. Finally, after collecting himself, he said one word: Sasquatch. Great, I thought. Now both of them had seen one, but I had not. Then he said, huge and scary. So Marty and I got up and lit the area up, but of course there was nothing to see. Just then we smelled that same odor on the air, but heard no movement. So again, we went back into camp. Think of the luck. Most of my best friends see 2 different Bigfoot on this trip. Maybe I too would get lucky yet. As the night went on, we noticed that, unlike other nights, there was no moon at all. It had gotten cloudy, and nearly all the animal sounds had ceased around us. Then, as if on cue, we heard that same sound Marty had heard the first time from the big one. Only this wasn't far off. It seemed to be right near us. Then again, from the other side of camp, another call out from a big one, and then a third, and then a fourth, much smaller. We were surrounded indeed. We all stood up, lighting the area around camp the best we could. The animals kept moving from tree to tree. They would get out of sight, and then they would make a call. Then moments later, they would move again. We couldn't keep track of them all. Finally, Steve lit up a big one in full beam of his light, and it looked directly at us. Just as it did, a small one ran up beside it. They both made a call and then ran off into the night. And with that, the activity stopped. We were very much afraid of these animals. They made it very clear that we were intruding on their space. Finally, the sun came up. We packed up and left the area just as fast as we could. Somehow, Marty's ankle was much better today, and we started hiking out as fast as we could. About 6 hours later, we reached the parking lot. All the way home, we talked about what happened. Just who could we trust with this information that wouldn't think we were nuts? Finally, Marty's other uncle used to talk about Bigfoot. We'd drive over to his place right away and tell him about it. Well, Marty called him on the way home, and Bill told us to come over right away as he was excited to hear what happened. We made our usual calls home to alert everyone that we were fine, that we would be home later that day. But off to Bill it was. He was just a few more hours away. Well, Bill was out in the driveway when we got there, just as Marty had described. He was an old Vietnam vet, paranoid about the government cover-ups and just who shot JFK. So him sunning himself in the yard in OD green shorts under an American flag, looking like Lieutenant Dan on a good day, made total sense. We all busted into the basement, into his headquarters, as he called it. He broke out an old tape recorder and set it on the circular table, and we all sat down around it. He clicks play and record at the same time, and we begin to tell him the story. Through all the details and his follow-up questions, we went through nearly 2 90-minute tapes. It was well dark outside by the time we emerged from the basement. Bill thanked us for trusting him with the eyewitness account and promised he would guard it with his life, to which I had no doubt he would. He advised that we didn't talk about it to anyone, but even if the government showed up to torture us, it wasn't worth all that would happen if we talked. With that, we loaded up in the Blazer once more and headed for home. Lofton wasn't that far from Vegas, so it wasn't long before Steve pulled into his driveway and the adventure was over. Over the next couple of weeks, Steve was kind of a ghost. His dad had found out we took the Blazer and had gotten him in a lot of heat, so we hadn't seen him until his grounding was over. Finally, he came by and he didn't look good at all. He came clean that he hadn't had a good night's sleep since we got back. He told me that when he had seen the big Sasquatch by himself, something happened to him. It wasn't that he had seen it from far off. It came up to him, knocked him to the ground, and then stood over him on 2 legs and 1 arm. It growled at him and snorted, and then drooled that hit him directly in the face. It smacked all around him as if trying to figure out what he was, before letting out a scream that hurt his chest, and it ran off. Now every time he closes his eyes to sleep, all he sees is this monster in his dreams. Now he hasn't slept in days. I tried to assure him that we were safe and that eventually those feelings would pass, but again, for more weeks, he declined further and further. Marty and I had to leave for school before Steve. It wasn't until the Thanksgiving break when we got home that we had learned that Steve had not gone off to school at all. In fact, he wasn't doing very well at all. My parents didn't want to say anything that would make me distracted from school, but when I went over to see him, his father said it would only be for a short visit, as Steve was not mentally well these days. He said he had gone downhill right after our trip, and the doctors can't figure it out. Sometimes at night he screams out. As I went in to see my friend, the first thing I noticed was all the medication bottles all over the room. He sat, staring out the window, not moving or talking. I said hello to him, and I tried to get him to talk, but he just looked away and back out the window. That was where I left my friend. I returned to school, and before I got back for the summer, Steve had gone into full-time care at the hospital. Marty and I could never really figure it out. Some years after I graduated from college, I had heard that Steve had managed to hang himself in the hospital. The note read one word: Sasquatch. Well, this trio thought they had won the sighting encounter lottery until the scary Bigfoot showed up. Just when you think everything's all Brady Bunch, the real danger is around you. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.